How to deal with grief. Hi, my name is Dr.Meghana Dikshit. I'm the author of the book You Matter and Brain and Performance Expert. A lot of you have asked me this question, how to deal with grief. What can you do to change your life so that you can cope up with grief? Before we come to the point of how can you change your life now and cope with the grief, let's look at how grief changes your brain. When you lose something or someone or an opportunity or a relationship, what happens in your brain is your brain starts triggering fight, flight or freeze response that comes from your fear center. Automatically your brain starts triggering those kind of hormones that tells you to run away from a situation or fight with a situation in order to cope with that loss. When your fear center is triggered, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that basically is involved into decision making, a logical thinking brain or rational thinking about something shuts down. And you start operating from that feeling that you are missing out on something. There is something going wrong in your life and that fear grips you. When that fear grips you, you go through various stages of loss. Yes, there are 5 stages of loss or 5 stages of grief that you're going through. Before I talk about these 5 stages of grief, I want to tell you this. Maybe there are people in your life, those who are telling you to get over the grief or those who are telling you to move on. My suggestion is, don't do that. Every person has a different timeline to move away from grief or deal with the grief. If you don't deal with the grief constructively, it may create havoc in your life. Grief is an emotion that goes deep inside your heart to create a lot of disruption if it is not dealt properly. Any such kind of a destructive emotion can actually act like a volcano. Imagine a volcano. It's trying to erupt from the surface and you just see that it's erupting. Now you put a lot of cement on it. You put a tar, you put cement and you close that door. Now the volcano may not erupt at the place where it should be erupting. It will start traveling parallel to the ground and wherever it will see a weakest spot, it will erupt there. Now you may not be aware of that weak spot. That weak spot could be your health. That weak spot could be somewhere in your money or your relationships or your career. When you're not aware of this weak spot and that moment when the volcano erupts there, it creates and causes a lot of destruction in that area. Now if you suppress your grief, it may cause you to compromise your immune system. And it may cause you to withdraw from your relationships. It may cause you to make wrong decisions in your career or your money. A lot of times you will observe that when you're dealing with grief, everything you feel around you is not so good. You just start feeling the world is over to get you. You start feeling that, that you're sinking. Something is not right in your life. And most often when it keeps piling up, you start feeling that everything is going wrong. Does that happen with you or has it happened with you? Let me know in the comment box if you've experienced some sort of a loss of grief in your life. Now, when you continue to live in this state of suppression of grief, it turns eventually into a volcano. That's where I was talking about the disruption. Now, when it creates that disruption, it actually destroys and destructs a lot of things in your life. You may have lost some relationships or you may have lost some people or opportunities or things in your life in the past. But is it really worth that you're now disrupting or, creating that destruction in your current life or your future to come? Now, what are the stages of this grief? The first stage of grief is denial. Go back in time when you lost something. A lot of times you will observe that when you lose something, it takes time, it takes a while to adjust with that loss. You start denying. Aise kabhi kuch hua hi nahi. You start suddenly feeling that that person is around you. Or you want to connect back with that person. Or maybe, when you lose a person, you start feeling that you're suddenly missing them. The things, the opportunity, everything that you kind of go into the denial. And that denial helps you to cope up with that situation in terms of nothing has happened. Now you see, the reality is far from what you're believing right now if you're in denial. In reality, you know that that thing is not with you. So then what happens? After staying in denial, it depends on your timeline, how long will you stay there. Then you go into the bargaining state. The bargaining or negotiation state is you start seeking, you start, requesting God for sending that person back in your life. You start trying to connect with that person and start bargaining and saying that, okay, I will do whatever it takes. I will do what you want me to do, but please come back to me. You'll start bargaining with people or God around you to give you some peace. When that bargaining also doesn't work, then that grief turns into anger. Now you start feeling angry about everything, about yourself, about people around you, about the situations, about God. You start fighting with people. You start fighting with yourself. You start fighting with God. That why you had to face this. Has it happened to you? I know this state, and this state is not a very easy state because this is where the volcano is erupting. This is where the destruction is happening. Let me know in the chat box when you are going through the stage of anger, what exactly you destroyed. What destruction that you created in your life? Where did this volcano erupted in your space? And when you overcome this anger, then the next stage comes. The next stage is of depression. That's worse. I have been through it. When I lost my mom, all of these stages, denial was like, I don't want to face this situation. So I dived deeper into the work. When that didn't work, I started bargaining and I started talking to the God that please, I'm feeling extremely guilty that I didn't do enough for my mother. Please help me with this. That didn't work with me. Then I started getting angry on people around me and I started snapping at everybody. When that didn't work, I tanked into depression. And that depression literally created so much havoc in my space. I gained 20 kilos of weight. I started feeling extremely sad about everything. I was withdrawing from life. I was not interested in anything. And after the depression stays there, and if you deal with it constructively, then you move to the 5th stage, and that stage is of acceptance. You finally accept that loss is real. And these 5 stages can come and go too. It's not necessary that if you have moved from bargaining to anger, then you'll not go back to bargaining. You will. Till the first 4 stages, from denial, bargaining, anger to depression, you can keep moving and keep flowing into the stages up and down. But once you reach the stage of acceptance, that's the stage where your prefrontal cortex lights up again. And you finally make peace with that loss and you start feeling, okay, I have lost this thing, that person, that relationship and opportunity. What can I learn from this loss? What is my biggest learning? I'll tell you something. Sometimes grief and loss can be a biggest blessing, biggest opportunity. Because you don't learn when you are happy. You live your life when you're happy. You learn when you are in grief, when you are in loss. And that acceptance gives you a lot of understanding of the mistakes that you made, the choices that you made. What can you do to change it? In future, how can you avoid this disaster? It gives you a lot of growth and evolution in your space. And in that moment, you see your 0.2 version. You start emerging as a different person. You no longer associate with the person that you were in the past. And that's the best thing to happen, because you know what? A human being is supposed to evolve and grow. So if you look at grief as a point of opportunity that gives you or allows you to grow in your life. Because I'll tell you something, no growth is complete without a loss. Think about it. Give it a thought. No growth is complete without a loss. Because when you grow, when you become the best version of yourself, you're actually losing the previous version of you. So you can take grief as an opportunity and start working on it. If you need help, seek help from someone to deal with the grief constructively. How can you overcome these first 4 stages so that you can go to the next stage and you can start evolving and emerging as a better human being? So you see, grief is not always a bad thing. If you resonate with this video, let me know in the comment section what are the top 3 learnings that you learned from this video. And if you are dealing with grief, or if you feel somebody else in your life is dealing with grief, please make sure that you share this video. And if you really want some life-changing advices, subscribe to this channel and like this video.